Today on Locked On Red Wings, youth and grit overcome star power in the red and white game.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University Hockey. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Scotty, training camp happened over the weekend.
Heck yeah, baby.
Training camp happened. So there were a lot of things that were said, a lot of availabilities that were had. Honestly, I think Derek Lalonde, anytime he speaks, that's kind of who you want to listen to. Most players, I mean, we've talked about it on the show before, right, Scotty? Like, most players don't really give you anything of substance to work with. They're all coached on how to talk to the media. Yeah. So maybe a couple of cuts from guys I listened to, but mostly Newsy, who's pretty honest with where his headspace is at, has said the most interesting things at training camp and then after the red and white game. And we'll talk about that. But first, we want to talk about the game itself, Scotty. One thing that stood out to me is, like, they pretty well stacked the Team Red lineup. And let me pull it up for you here, but it's kind of insane. It's got Andrew Kopp, Lucas Raymond, Hunter Johannes, Michael Rasmussen, Michael brandsegg-nygard, Danielson, Dominic Shine, Alexander Doucette, Dylan Larkin, Cross Hannes, Ratcliffe, Chison. Oh my God, I've forgotten how to pronounce it. He's gone for one season. Jason. There you go.
There you go. You need help? Like, I'm tag team it if you want.
Power play specialist Alex Jason back on a PTO. Patrick Kane, right. Marco Kasper, Alex DeBrincat, Oli Mott, Justin Holt, Ben Sherratt, Antti Tuomisto, William Wallander, Gustafsson, Dello, and then in that line and Talbot. Okay, that's Team Red, right? That's Team Red. Here's Team White's roster. Tarasenko, great start. Tyler Mott, Dries, Snively, two like career AHL guys, but very good at that level. Austin Watson, Christian Fischer, JT Compher, Bantle, Carter Mazer, Berggren, Emmett Finney, Amadeus Lombardi, Jakub Richlovsky, Elmer Soderblom, Joe Veleno, Johansson, Petrie, Vero, Rafferty, Edvinsson, Lagesson, Didier, Cossa, and Husso. All right. When I read those two rosters, which roster do you think is going to win the red and white game?
Yeah, well, then that's, exactly to your point. I would imagine that Red would have comfortably won. But to your point, in the cold and then right there was like at this early in where we are in the hockey season, the players that have something to play for, you are going to notice a lot more than the players that don't.
Right. And that's really what it comes down to, because Team White, with the lack of star power and like just completely dominated the game. And now the red and white game is not a traditional game, and there's not a ton. Like, that's the thing, is I want to put this disclaimer out there. Like, we talk about the red and white game, it's mostly fun, but you can't really take anything away of substance from this because of what you just said, right? Like, the final of the game says 7-4 Team White, but really it was 6-1 because those extra couple goals came in the shootout. So really it was 6-1 Team White in regulation, but the first period was 30 minutes long, and it was 5-on-5. The second period was 16 minutes long, alternating 1-minute power plays for both teams. So, like, when we're talking about what stood out, it was definitely that Team White, the guys, the team with draft picks but weren't like top, first round draft picks rather, and like fringe NHL guys had a lot more to play for and looked like it when they were battling against Team Red that had future Hall of Famer Patrick Kane and current captain Dylan Larkin and all the first round picks on the team.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where they're certainly gonna not like take it easy on them in terms of like babying them. Like it has nothing to do with the opponent. It has everything to do with self-preservation. And like, all right, we're not going to push this. This is the first action we've, seen in in a Red Wings setting since, May. Like we're gonna take this, or April, I guess. We're gonna take this a little bit easy. We're not gonna go all out here, go all the way to the wall. And that's the exact opposite of what the White team was made up of. And I think that's I kind of like how they set it up like that, because I think it's cool to have all of the players that truly have something to lose or gain all on the same team, right? And that's not to, obviously you want all of the players who are going to play together at the NHL level to play together. So like that makes sense too. But I do think it's cool to have, all the players who are jockeying for, even some of those guys, like a handful, aren't even like, oh, we're trying to make the NHL roster. Some of them are fighting for, just like organizational rank and just like, oh, like, where am I going to get sent to when camp's over kind of thing. Like there's so much at play there. And I do think it's really cool that they divvied it up like that, just so that we could see, the players that have a lot to gain here in training camp all on the same team together.
Right. And so here's the part where we're going to try and give you our thoughts on the players that we did see and like players we were looking for. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask you a question. I want you to address a tweet.
One of mine?
Yep.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
You mentioned a tweet this weekend. You put out, a post, it's called now, this weekend, where you said that I don't have it pulled up in front of me, so you can adjust to get the exact wording correct here. But it was something in line with your confidence level in Nate Danielson to make the NHL roster. Can you please elaborate a little bit more? Was that in the moment, I'm Brian, I'm overly excited, or are you thinking that there is a legitimate path here this early on?
So, what's funny is I tried to word that tweet, and the exact tweet was Nate Danielson is going to make it tough on the Red Wings. Sure. That's what I said.
Right.
And I tried to word that.
The exact, because that is a lot different than he's going to make the team. So I'm glad you did say what the exact wording was there.
Because I didn't want it to come off and it ended up blowing up. It has 400 likes and a bunch of I was trying to play it cool. But the reason I said that was because in everything we have seen out of Nate Danielson, even going back to last preseason, he has shined. And I know he only had the one assist in the prospect games, but he could take over entire shifts with his two-way ability. In this game, again, with Team Red, he was one of the few players on Team Red, which, he's playing for somebody, or for something rather. So it makes sense that he's balling out and going as hard as he can. But his two-way ability was incredible. There were a couple times where he busted butt on a back check and broke up a couple plays. I'm trying to remember who he stripped the puck from coming back the other way on Team White. But Danielson looked really good in the red and white game again. And I'm just it's one of those things where I think it does go, I don't want to say goes unnoticed, because I feel like most beat writers are like Nate Danielson looks good, but he's not showing up on the score sheet. So I feel like a lot of Red Wings fans are probably not taking much notice of Danielson, but he's looked really good. He's always involved in the play, and he's always setting up his teammates. And the points, I'm not really worried about the offense. As Newsy says, if you care about the defense, the offense will come. So I just noticed that Nate Danielson was looking a hell of a lot better than a lot of players on the ice in the red and white game, in the prospects game, and then last year in the preseason. And I'm he's gonna make it difficult on the Red Wings to justify sending him back down if he continues playing like this. He played really well.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I also think that wording specifically is fantastic and exactly what we can hope for, to be completely honest with you, right? I think that's best case scenario for the Wings. And it's you're kind of being put between a rock and a hard place a little bit, right? You don't, if he's clearly good enough to be in the NHL right now, you don't want to have to send him down, but you also don't want to give him 8 minutes a night on the fourth line. So you have to play the game a little bit and walk that line like they've been doing with Marco Kasper, like they did with Edvinsson the last couple of seasons. You have to
where's he better served?
Right. You got to do the dance a little bit, but at the same time, if we're coming out of the preseason with a conversation on here where we're this dude should be in the NHL, but like we have to do this, then that is a massive win. And this fan base is going to only get more and more excited about Danielson.
Yeah, he just plays with such confidence and like
strong skater, man.
Strong skater, strong forechecker too, which I love. I've been liking a lot of what I've seen out of Danielson.
So does the system.
So we got to get to a quick break when we return. I want to talk about Mazur, Cossa, Husso as well. And clean up any other players that we thought were notable as well. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. One Caleb Williams pass yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineup stays in play even if one of the players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks, your picks are still alive. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to even need a win to receive the bonus $50. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Also, got to talk to you guys today about Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. So join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed.
Indeed you do.
Segment 2. I just did a hat change. I just did a hat change.
Unbelievable. Mid show, mid transition, mid ad break, dude's doing hat changes. That's crazy.
I was trying to be smooth with it, but there's not enough time in the transition.
We're not.
Well, listen, the Lions won, and the gritty Tigs control their own destiny in the wild card. So, crazy. I mean, technically, you could argue the Red Wings won too. So, should I go grab and do another hat change in between 2 and 3?
You should not.
Oh, okay.
You should not do it.
Scotty, in terms of other players that stood out, I think that we got to talk about the goaltending situation, at least in regards to Team White. Ville Husso played 13 minutes of the first period and then didn't come back. I'm not trying to sound any alarms. That was probably by design because he hasn't had live reps like in a year and a half in all reality. So they started him slow. He kind of got... He probably immediately felt like, well, same old, because the game started and Alex DeBrincat immediately split the D of Edvinsson and Petrie and went in all alone and buried one past him. He was like, more things change, the more they stay the same. But I mean, outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot to really break down with Husso other than like he was on the ice and playing because he didn't really see a whole heck of a lot of action. Team Red didn't pressure a whole lot. And then when Sebastian Cossa came in, I thought Cossa looked really sharp during this red and white game. And that was actually really, really reassuring to see because he is pretty notorious for having crappy camps.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a great point. I on both of those fronts. Husso just being out there, seeing him play and leave the ice and be like healthy the whole time, I think is a plus for sure. But I think when it comes to Cossa, like he's the guy that everybody in this fan base just overreacts to every training camp. Like he's the one, right? I know I'm not even trying to just like pick on you, but like yes, you did last year. We people don't forget, but like the I don't let them. Genuinely though, like he's the one that everybody overreacts to every camp. It's like, oh, how does Cossa look against NHL talent? How does he look against like the Red Wings players? How is he looking in training camp? And then depending on that, we all have to just jump to some massive conclusion about where he should be or what he's ready for and whatnot. And it's just, it's really nice to just not have that rhetoric one game in. Like, I'm just really glad, like it probably is still going to happen. Like, to be honest with you, it's probably right around the corner. It's probably still going to happen here at some point. But it's really nice to have Cossa get in there, look good, and not have everybody screaming that the sky is falling after one appearance like we have dealt with for what seems like every year of his professional career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna wait and see too, like how he looks in the preseason. And I'm again also not gonna make any judgment based on preseason. I'm not gonna fall into my trap that I did last year. And I mean, to be fair, last year, like he looked bad in the prospects games, he looked bad in training camp, and he looked bad in preseason. So I was like a little anxious. Yeah. And then he had a slow start in Grand Rapids. So I don't feel like, and I don't think I freaked out. Well, maybe. I don't know. It is me. But
I don't. Well, I do remember. It was fun.
I'm gonna approach it. Sebastian Cossa is fine. I'm glad that he looked sharp. The only 3 goals he did allow were in the shootout, and when I read you these names, you're gonna go, okay, that makes sense. First goal scorer on him, Patrick Kane in the shootout. Second goal scorer on him, Dylan Larkin in the shootout. Third goal scorer on him, Alex DeBrincat in the shootout. So you got a Hall of Famer and 2 NHL All Stars. It's like, that's not bad. I'm not in a shootout too, where it's just you and the players. Right. So I'm like, okay, all right.
There, yeah.
I'm like, that's fair. So, but like in the actual play on the penalty kill, and it was penalty kill / power play drills in the 5-on-5, he looked good, and that was good to see. Carter Mazur also played really well, pretty good as well. He played like Carter Mazur, tough forechecker, got in the corners. He was flying up the wing. They mentioned a couple times he wears 43 in honor of his favorite player of all time, Darren Helm, which I find great. But he was also part of a really pretty tic-tac-toe pass in the 5-on-5 drills. I'm sorry, that was on the power play drills. He got it from Joe Snively along the boards, downloaded him, and then tic-tac-toe right out front to Sheldon Dries, who buried it for the first power play goal of the power play drills. And it was just the instant chemistry between those 3 was really palpable. But again, don't want to read too much into it in the red and white game when those 3 players all have a lot to prove.
Yeah, for sure. I think Mazur is going to be, when preseason games start this weekend, next week, early next week.
Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that Mazur is going to be one of the more talked about players in preseason games, and he's going to get a lot of minutes. Like I that's kind of what I'm anticipating, especially early on in preseason. I really expect him to get a lot of minutes. This is a guy that we've talked about a lot, but like I sound like Chris Collinsworth there. This is a guy that really is maybe, like, dare I say, more than anybody else fighting for a roster spot. Like, I think that there might be an argument for that more than anybody else, he is fighting for a spot on the NHL roster this year for opening night. And I think we've talked about how it's not it's far from a guarantee. There are enough, and especially with the 8-4 or 8-3 thing they have going on too with defense and goalie, like it's certainly far from a great guarantee. And if the season started tomorrow, it wouldn't happen. But at the same time, I really do think amongst the forwards, if there is one that isn't currently mocked to be on the roster that could make it, it's him. So I'm really excited for how he's going to look the rest of the way.
Absolutely. Quick recap on the goal scorers before we head to segment 3 and talk about quotes and cuts. You had Alex DeBrincat give Team Red an instant 1-0 lead, followed by Amadeus Lombardi on an accidental goal. He lost the puck when he was deking, and it went 5-hole on Cam Talbot. And that was assisted by Jonathan Berggren. Sheldon Dries on the power play from Tyler Mott and Joe Snively, as one of the goals we've already talked about. You had Tyler Mott assisted by no one. It was actually an unassisted breakaway. He intercepted an errant pass from Alex DeBrincat, went all the way down and scored. I'm like, that's what you got Tyler Mott for, because they were on the penalty kill. It was a shorthanded breakaway goal.
Experienced Tyler Mott hockey right there.
Hey, man, he picked off that pass so beautifully. You had Simon Edvinsson on the power play from Vladimir Tarasenko and Jonathan Berggren. Sheldon Dries, unassisted. Christian Fischer, assisted by Joe Snively. That was a breakaway goal again. Patrick Kane in the penalty shot.
Snively, man.
Yeah.
Shout out Joe Snively. Like, what are we doing? Shout out.
That's somebody that Derek Lalonde mentioned, or was it Dries? I'm sorry. It might have been Sheldon. I'm getting them confused. Yeah, he's been chasing down Dries for years, he said, since junior hockey, because he really likes the way Dries plays. So Sheldon Dries and Joe Snively are two really experienced AHL veterans who perform well at that level. They're going to be your fringe NHL guys that you're going to call up, and they're good depth to have. They're going to be really good for the Red Wings in that role. I mean,
we obviously we talk Griffins a lot on this show, and like that's the if they end up playing there, those are good pieces to have, and those are guys that can hopefully help that Griffins team be really solid again.
Absolutely. Scotty, we're going to do a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk a little bit about some of Derek Lalonde's comments, as well as cuts in segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, Lalonde has talked to the media like 3 times since training camps began. I think we should start with the most recent because it comes after the red and white game. Mostly just talking about 2 big things. One being that he was asked by Connor Eargood about the A situation. If he has like any sense of urgency to fulfill that A that David Perron once wore and now is with the Ottawa Senators. He said there is no timeline on assigning another A. Like he mentioned Raymond and Sider, but also mentioned some of the vets they have. Basically what he said was he asks everyone in the locker room, regardless of whether or not they're wearing an A, to be a leader, which is a very canned answer. But at the same time, I kind of love it. But that's my cheesy side of me. I'm like, it's such a good like non-answer. But yeah, like you want everyone in your locker room to be an A.
Who's the one team that had like a million A's the one year? Was it the Rangers? Somebody had a billion A's a few years back. Anyway, yeah, man. Like I think. I mean, have we talked about this situation a lot? Like we've done so many episodes in the last 15 months probably on, like long-term A's, short-term A's, who's going to lead, after Perron left, etc. At this point, I would be pretty surprised if it wasn't Sider or Kane. Like that's pretty much where I'm at. I think it's going to be one of those two. I think it's going to be Mo or Kane that's picking up that. But at the same time, they could just make, I don't know, they did the Roman home and road thing rather, and kind of switched it around. Like they could just make Kopp and Sherratt like permanent. Like I don't know. Like we'll see. But we've talked about this a lot. Like I said, I just after the extension as well. Like I really feel like Mo is kind of in line to get one, and then Patrick Kane's Patrick Kane, so he's always on the table.
Right. I think that Patrick Kane might get it like this year, and it might go to Sider next year, or if not, it's going to go to Sider immediately. But that's just like what I feel, right? Just clearly the coaching staff might feel a little differently. They might feel like there is no urgency because, like you said, they already have 2 other A's on the roster as it stands, right? So they don't feel any urgency to replace that. It's just really us fans who are like, who's going to get the letter? Who's going to – because I feel like it means more to fans than it does to the players at times. Who wears it,
Maybe A. C, obviously not. But, like, I think, A maybe. I don't know. I've also never been an NHL player wearing an A. So, like, hard for me to comment on that. But I get your point.
He's going to be Jeff Petrie. Speaking of Jeff Petrie, Lalone mentioned the defensive pairs, and they asked about if Moritz Seider and Ben Sherratt were like a slam dunk to play together, and he said no. He said they basically elevated Ben Sherratt to the top pair last year because they needed somebody to fill in for Jake Wallman. He said it's going to be a very fluid situation. He's like, we want, and this is the thing that Red Wings fans are going to celebrate when I say, he said that they're going to want to see looks of Moritz Seider and Simon Edvinsson together. And that filled me with so much hope and joy. Because, I mean, long term, that was our idea anyways, right? Like, like that was the dream pairing that we had been thinking about for years. We thought short term Edvinsson would start out on the second pair. We didn't think he'd be ready for Moritz Seider's assignments in year one. But if they think he's ready, that pair, I can't say that Simon Edvinsson would not be an upgrade on that top pair, at least long term. He might struggle at first with that assignment, but like long term, that top pair is going to be. I really stopped myself short of saying one of the best top pairs in the league.
You're right. But you should not say that. Yeah, you should stop yourself short.
A bona fide top pair. A bona fide top pair.
Okay. Yeah, that's obviously what we've been talking about since Edvinsson was drafted. I think it's going to be really interesting because you don't want your second pair to be like brutal, right? Like and I can't fathom that this season a Petrie Sherratt pair is going to be some incredibly grades out really well pairing. And so that's what I would assume would happen if we did get the Edvinsson Mo pair. So I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on it. Obviously in a perfect world, I want to see it because I think that it's not, I know that it's the highest ceiling. We all know it's the highest ceiling. And to your point, it could down the road end up being one of the better pairs out there. But like, I think right now you need to make sure your second pair is serviceable. And like that's really hard for me to just be like, you know what, let's just throw Sherratt and Petrie out there and see what happens. That's a tough sell for me personally. I'm not saying, that I am, right or wrong. It's just a tough sell for me.
Right. And there is a little bit of a leap between Derek Lalonde saying we want to give Mo and Ed looks and that being the top pair, right?
Correct.
Like that is a leap, but it's exciting to hear that that's something that they're,
everything's about getting looks. That's the whole point, right?
It's exciting that that's already on their minds as being a pairing option. But, they also talk a lot about, and they asked Edvinsson about this too, about he and Petrie, and Lalonde even mentioned it too. Like they have good chemistry, and we saw that at the end of last season, right? As much as Red Wings fans like to make, and we, even us at times, well, Jeff Petrie had some really bad games, but he's not as bad as Red Wings fans make him out to be. In fact, he's your second best right side D-man still, without a shadow of a doubt on this roster. I think that they did have good chemistry at the end of last season, and Simon Edvinsson helped elevate Jeff Petrie's play because of that, and a little bit of vice versa. And Edvinsson and Lalonde talked about Jeff Petrie's mentorship role with Simon Edvinsson, which is something that, you don't want to undersell. Like having an NHL vet who's been around for years and can help you transition into that role is extremely beneficial. And they also apparently are great friends because they've been going on fishing trips together, whatever that's worth. Great for chemistry, I suppose.
I think you tweeted something about that too, you maniac.
Yeah.
Look, they're fishing together. They're going to be an elite pair. All right, guys. That's really all you need to know.
Listen, I'm not coming on here and I'm not going to try and say like Simon Edvinsson single-handedly is fixing the D and the D is going to be one of the best in the league. That's not what's happening here. I'm just saying that Simon Edvinsson, no matter what pair he is on, is improving the D. And I think that's pretty fair to say.
All Brian's saying that if they end up being a really good defensive unit and the two of them are on a pair together and are really good, that he's going to take all the credit.
Yeah, it was me, guys. All me.
Right. That's all he said. That's it.
Oh man, we're running out of time here. There's so many words that were said this weekend by so many different players. What did I have else down here?
We
Let's
are back
see
to
if-
5 a week too. So
Yeah, focus on breakout and D zone. Bergie looks great. Got caught in the middle last year with a lot of guys who play similar roles.
Yeah.
And so he didn't get called up. Really wants him to develop a two-way game, which is what Berggren mentioned too, that he watched a lot of smaller forwards that play good defense this season. A lot of tape. He said he specifically watched Sidney Crosby on how to play defense, because Crosby's obviously, one of the best two-way centers to have ever played the game. So there's a lot of quotes to go over. We might be playing catch-up over the next couple days as we get closer to the first preseason game on
baby.
Wednesday. That's against the Blackhawks in Chicago on September 25th.
We are so back.
No. We got a few more days before we are so back.
Oh, I thought camp was we're so back.
Are we? I don't know. I can't keep track anymore.
Okay, so you're gonna tell me I'm wrong, and you don't even know what the actual thing is.
All I know is that the first game of the season, the first actual regular season game, is golly gee, we are so back. I remember that.
Golly gee, unbelievable.
We had decided upon that.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, we unilaterally we did.
Okay, cool. I forgot that I signed up for that, but
all right, Scott. Do you have any final thoughts, dude?
We ball, baby.
We ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, same time, same place. See your team every day.
Every day.